Hey everyone, welcome back to Raising the Nuts. If you didn't watch yesterday's video, you won't know what's going on today, so go back and watch yesterday's video up here. Essentially, I'm going over one hand a day this week from the Stones live stream where a vlog watcher named Paul wore a Raising the Nuts t-shirt. If you guys are interested in getting one of these Raising the Nuts t-shirts, send an email to info@raisingthenuts.com. We're going to look to getting some in stock, and we're going to raise some money for some mental health charities by selling them. So send an email there and we'll get back to you. Thanks so much for the positive feedback I've gotten so far on the video from yesterday. We're going to keep it going here. It's a tough transition to try to get into this. It's something very outside the comfort zone. And so I'm having fun doing it. I'm just going to try to keep getting better as I go along. So let's get right into this hand today. All right, so for today's hand, we're about 40 minutes into the session, 20 minutes after the last hand took place. It appears as though we're playing a 1, 2, 3 game and there's a $6 shuttle. I think it's a $1 on the button, but I'm not really sure about that. This hand actually goes really fast, so I'm going to have to kind of pause here pretty regularly because it just moves really quickly. So if you didn't watch yesterday, I'm doing unfiltered, no edit analysis on this hand. I've watched the hand once before. So the action folds to Paul here, our hero, in what looks like the hijack with king-queen offsuit. So we have a pretty easy open with this hand. Obviously going to be profitable raise, so I think going ahead and raising, which is what he does, is the right play. Now, as far as sizing goes, if you watched the previous video yesterday, he opens to $15 in the same blind situation with 4 or 5 suited in early position. He chooses to open to 4x here with king-queen. So that's something that we're going to want to pay attention to as Paul and as the other players at the table. Are his sizings different based on the strength of his hand? Now, some people have a strategy where they'll open smaller in earlier position, open to smaller sizes, and so you just have to kind of gauge on what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and if they are varying their sizes based on the strength of their hand. So the open looks pretty good here to $20, like I said. Action folds to Jimmy here, or excuse me, Jimmy folds on the cutoff, button folds, the small blind folds, and the actions on Marle here in the big blind. And she decides to make a call. So once she calls, she only has Joe left to act behind her, which is important to note on what we think her range is going to be. Now, for someone like Marle, I think she's more apt to flat a lot of the stronger hands in her range if there's, say, maybe a weaker play in the big blind. And I don't think she probably considers Joe to be a weaker player. So when she flats in the small blind here, I think her range is going to be something like pocket pairs from 2s to 8s. I think she'll probably be 3-betting 9s plus. 9s, sometimes she'll flatten there as well. And then she'll have hands like Broadway combinations, offsuit Broadways, suited aces, hands like that. I think she's really incentivized to 3-bet a lot of her range in this spot because she really wants to knock Joe out of the pot and get the pot heads up with our hero Paul and take initiative. So I'm not really sure how she's going to construct her small blind flatting range here, but I think it's going to contain a lot of hands that just want to see a flop and don't want to get priced out and are okay going 3 ways. So like I mentioned, those hands are going to be suited connectors, pocket pairs, and then your ace-x suited type hands. So once she does decide to flat, Joe makes the fold, and we're going to take this flop heads up. The flop comes down queen 6-4 rainbow. So the first thing that I'm thinking in this spot, if I am our hero Paul, that I'm going to be continuation betting this flop with a really high frequency, meaning this board shouldn't hit Marle's range very hard, given the range that we said. You know, the best hands that she'll have will be pocket 4s and pocket 6s, and then, you know, she'll have a lot of hands that are, the better hands are going to be hands like queen 10, queen jack, maybe king queen. I think she would probably be 3-betting hands like king queen and ace queen, so we can probably remove those. And then the hands like pocket 7s, pocket 8s, pocket 9s, if she flats that, pocket 5s, pocket 3s, pocket 2s, and then hands like suited connectors, like 8-9 suited. We can just generate a lot of fold equity on the flop right away, and if we do have a hand like king jack or something like that, we're fine with those hands folding. So this is going to be a board that we're going to continuation bet with a very high percentage of the time. Marle does check, as we expect her to check most of the time, and when the action's on Paul, I don't know if it shows it here. I know action goes really quickly. He decides to check back with king-queen, which I don't like. The reason that we want to be betting this hand, a hand as strong as king-queen, is it's just really strong, obviously, first of all. Second of all, we're going to want to set up 3 streets of value versus hands like Queen Jack and Queen 10. Obviously, those are the hands that we're coolering pretty hard. Additionally, we're not behind very many hands. And we also want to start betting with, like, if we're going to bet all those bluffing hands, obviously we want to bet a strong hand like King Queen here. So additionally, Marle can work in some floats here with very weak equity hands. So just betting King Queen makes the most sense. He decides to check it back, and we take the turn. I'm going to play it through here. Yeah. So the turn's an offsuit 9 now. It's a completely rainbow board. And when Marle checks it over to us again, now it's really looking like she has a hand like pocket 7s, pocket 8s. I think that if she turned some sort of straight draw, if she had a hand like 7-8 suited, or if she had a hand like Jack 10 suited, that those would tend to start betting here on the turn. She's occasionally going to have some traps maybe that are going to go for a check raise with a hand like pocket 6s or pocket 4s, but I think generally speaking, she's going to probably start betting those hands as well. She can obviously have some, I think, again, if she has hands like a Queen Jack or a Queen 10, she's just going to start betting. So when she checks it over to us, I think we probably want to just put out some sort of smaller bet to target hands like pocket 7s and pocket 8s and get 2 streets of value from those hands. Now, it's hard to kind of figure out what our bluffing range should look like in Paul's shoes, because when we check back flop on this exact texture, I guess it looks like we have a hand like maybe pocket 5s or pocket 3s, pocket 2s that don't want to bet. Maybe a hand like 6x. It's just that the way that this board works, the in-position player really wants to bet all of his hands at a high frequency. So hands like 6x want to bet for value and protection. Hands like 4x do okay betting as well. And then, all of your non-paired hands are really incentivized to bet just because the big blind doesn't really hit this flop that often. So it becomes very tricky to figure out these situations when you decide to check back, because you really shouldn't be checking back at that high of a frequency. Now, obviously, occasionally, if you do want to mix in some checks backs with some stronger hands, just because if you don't, then your opponent can really take advantage of that. Again, we talked about this yesterday. What Paul might be thinking here is that if his image is that of a tighter player, it might be difficult for him to get paid off on 3 streets by Marle here with his hand. And if not, maybe he can induce some bluff or just get some thinner value out of some weaker hands that maybe she thinks he will just check back with air and then start to bet later streets. So that is probably what his line of thinking is. I'm not sure. We'd have to, if I were coaching him, I would ask a bunch of different questions to try to get into what his thought process was. And maybe that's something maybe I should do in the future. I think you guys might find that interesting if I actually had Paul on here and asked him those questions, see what his thought process is, to see where we can delve into a little bit more. Anyway, once Marle does decide to check here, like I mentioned, I think we just start with a bet. And I would go somewhere, it looks like the pot's $48, so I would go somewhere in the neighborhood of $20, I think. And but Paul has a different choice. And now, once he decided to check the flop, so again, it happened really fast here. Paul put out $50 bet, which is a pot size bet. Once he decides to check the flop, I think it makes sense to go for a large sizing here, I guess, with his exact hand, given that he's trying to make up for lost value. I guess what he's assuming is that she either has hands that are just folding or hands that are calling. So I guess if he thinks that she has a hand like ace-5 suited that didn't 3-bet, then it's just going to fold here on the turn. But if she has a hand like pocket 7s or pocket 8s, it's going to call versus any sizing because it's a little confused by the flop check back. I'm not sure if that's what his thought process here. I'm just trying to figure out why he would go with the pot bet sizing here. She does make the call. Okay, I messed up the timing here on this. So there's the $50 bet out there, and Marle quickly throws in the $50. And so I think from a timing perspective, if we're trying to delve into the exact hand here with some live reads and some timing perspective here, the quick call would make me think she has a showdown type hand. Additionally, it's very unlikely for her to check call any sort of draw here on the turn, as she's very likely to lead with those hands on the turn to try to just blow him off of any equity he has, or just blow him off of an unpaired hand. Most of her draws are obviously going to be hands like Jack 10, maybe a hand like Jack 8 suited, or 7-8 suited, something like that, where she has 8 high or Jack high, and she needs to try to generate some fold equity. When she check calls, it's very likely that she has a showdown type hand, maybe a hand like Ace 6 or pocket sevens, pocket eights, pocket fives. She could have turned a hand with a 9 in it, like ace 9, I guess, is a hand, or 10-9 suited, 8-9 suited. And then I guess occasionally she'll have a hand like queen 10, but doesn't seem as likely. I think she will just start betting those on the turn. So the quick check call is obviously very good for our hand. We're very likely to be ahead, and we have pretty good clarity on rivers, depending on which rivers are bad for us. I think the worst river for us to see would probably be a 9 or a 6, and then maybe like a hand like a 7 or an 8 or a 5, just because those are more likely to make her a set. And then I guess an ace also. There's a chance she has a hand like ace 10, I guess, or ace jack. It would be hard for me to imagine that she calls a pot size bet on those on the turn with those, which is another reason why the pot size bet may not be ideal. If we want her to continue with some unpaired hands, then you can consider making a smaller bet. Anyway, she does make the call, and the river comes and offsuit 6. So this is one of the cards that I might be slightly concerned about. It's like I mentioned, it's possible she has a hand like ace 6 or 6-7 or 5-6 suited, I guess. Again, it comes down a lot to what hands she's going to be 3-betting from this position, and what hands she's going to be flatting. We're not really sure about that versus what we think Paul's range is going to be here for opening from the hijack. Once she does check, I think value bet is in order, and we want to make a bet that says we have a hand. I guess we should be value betting. I guess we can be value betting Jack 9. Actually, I would assume that in this spot we can. I'm trying to think through this as I'm talking about it, but I guess if we're betting pot on the turn, we're not really saying that we have a 9 in our hand too often. I don't think. I guess a hand like ace 9 or king 9 could make some sense, but I think more often than not we're saying we have a slow played queen or some sort of other slow played hand, and then I guess you can work in. If you aren't going to be c-betting the flop with a hand like king jack or king 10, then I guess you work in that to your bluff range. I'm not really sure. Again, it's kind of awkward when you're not usually in these situations on these board textures. So when she checks to us, deciding on a sizing here, there's $150 in the pot. We very clearly have a value bet with king queen, and we have to pick a sizing. And I think I hesitate to say that we have the nuts here, since I mentioned that she could have some 6x combos in her range. It's just obviously less likely now that there's 2 6s on the board, and it's looking far more likely that she has a hand like pocket 7s, pocket 8s, or a 9x hand. So we obviously are trying to get value from those hands, but also have to convince her that we can be bluffing in this spot too. Now, it could just be that we just lay her such a good price that she feels compelled to call. Maybe she thinks that she might be chopping with some other 9x hands. I'm not really sure on how to construct a sizing here and what is best when I'm put on the spot right now. I'd have to really think about this through a little bit. And this is the trouble of just giving you unfiltered thoughts, because this is a spot that I would tend to think a little bit more about the sizing. My inclination, just based on gut, would be to size somewhere around the half pot region, which is $75 or $80. Leave some doubt in their head that you could have a hand like king jack. And I think a hand like 9x is probably going to call. If it's going to call $50 or $30 or whatever, somewhere in that small region, I think it's probably going to call $75 or $80. I think once you start getting up into the 2/3 pot region is where a 9x might start to fold. Our hero Paul decides to, I called him our hero a lot in this video, but he puts out $50 again very quickly, and once he puts out $50, I think we're very likely to get called with this, so that is the benefit of that sizing, I guess. But I do think we miss out on some value here in the long run by not betting multiple streets. And as you can see here, I'm going to reveal the cards now. Marle does make the call, and she did have a 9. She had 10-9 suited. So now, whether to think about, it's easy to be results oriented and say, okay, well, Paul made an extra $100 here in this hand because he checked back the flop versus 10-9, and it allowed Marle to catch up enough to call off 2 bets. And I don't think that's an accurate way to think about things. We want to think about how we want to play this spot versus their entire range of hands that they could have. And also the fact that king queen's a really strong hand on this board, and we should be able to bet multiple streets here for value, especially when we are operating in a late position situation where our range is going to be a little bit wider and is going to include some more of the bluffs in hand. There's a little bit more validity to, say, a flop check back and going for two two streets on turn and river when we've opened an earlier position and we don't have as many bluffs to include in our range. So I do think that we should have bet the flop in general. I think Marle's hand, the way she played her hand, is fine. You know, she's clearly not in love with the situation. The turn is tough because she's facing a pot-sized bet, but she's made a pair now, so I don't blame her for calling there. And once she gets that spot in the river, she's just getting such a good price that if he's ever kind of clicking some random buttons and shows up with a hand like King Jack or has a hand like 8-9 or 10-9, that's kind of why she has to call, because she's chopping with those hands as well. So don't fault her for playing that this way either. But that's it for this hand. I'm sure I missed a bunch of details as I felt like I did yesterday, but we're going to keep putting these out. I'm going to put another one out tomorrow, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on the hand. I know it seems like a relatively mundane hand somewhat, but there's a lot of different decision points that can go into the hand. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy the channel, please click the subscribe button and like the video, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Later.
Say, oh, I am a believer. Oh, don't know where I'll be if I'm not free to take a lead.